It was 4:09 Universal Time, coordinated on July 19th, 2024. And in the span of 90 minutes, the world broke. Planes stopped moving. Surgeries got canceled. Supermarket checkouts froze. 911 dispatch centers went dark. Banks locked their own customers out. And 8.5 million Windows machines, all of them at the same time, crashed into that cold, familiar wall of blue and white text that every IT person on Earth fears seeing. The blue screen of death. Simultaneously, globally, unstoppable. And every single one of those machines was running the software of the company that was supposed to protect them. The bill? $23 billion in market cap. Gone. Before lunchtime. This is the story of CrowdStrike, the company that became the most trusted name in cybersecurity on the planet. The company that government agencies, Fortune 500 corporations, and critical infrastructure all handed their digital keys to. And the company that, with a single automated file push, brought the modern world to its knees faster than any hacker ever could. To understand how this happened, you have to go back to 2011. Two former McAfee executives, George Kurtz and Dmitry Alperovich, had a very simple pitch. Traditional antivirus software was already dead. Hackers weren't breaking in with viruses anymore. They were breaking in with credentials, with patience, with state-sponsored sophistication that no signature-based tool could catch. Kurtz and Alperovich weren't building an antivirus. They were building something they called a Falcon, an always-watching, AI-powered, cloud-native platform that sat on your endpoint and hunted threats in real time. The pitch hit at exactly the right moment. Cyber attacks were exploding. In 2014, Sony Pictures got eviscerated. In 2016, the Democratic National Committee got breached. In both cases, CrowdStrike was the company called in to figure out what happened. They named the Russian hacking groups Fancy Bear, Cozy Bear, and suddenly their name was everywhere. Why weren't just a security vendor anymore? They were the fixers. The digital forensics wizards that governments called when things went catastrophically wrong. The IPO came in 2019. Shares priced at $34. By the end of the first day, they closed at 58. Investors went absolutely wild. The story was perfect. A recurring revenue, cloud-native, AI-powered cybersecurity platform at a time when every CEO on Earth was terrified of a headline that said their customer data had been stolen. CrowdStrike was selling fear, and business had never been better. By mid-2024, the stock had touched $398 a share. The company was valued at close to $90 billion. George Kurtz was on magazine covers, on stage at Davos, collecting awards from every corner of the industry. CrowdStrike was the gold standard. They weren't just keeping up with threats, they were defining what modern security looked like. And that confidence, that market dominance, that unshakable sense of being untouchable, that was the exact thing that planted the seed of what was coming. Here's the part that makes cybersecurity engineers lose sleep. The thing that caused all of this wasn't a hack. It wasn't ransomware. It wasn't a state-sponsored attack from Russia or North Korea. It was a content configuration update. A routine, automatic file push. The most boring category of software deployment that exists. CrowdStrike's Falcon sensor works by pulling what the company calls channel files, small configuration bundles that tell the software what threats to look for. These aren't new software versions. They're not firmware updates. They're essentially updated instruction sets. Think of it like telling your watchdog, here are the new faces to look out for today. And CrowdStrike pushed these updates constantly, automatically, without user intervention. Because the whole point of the platform was that it was always current, always aware, always one step ahead. On July 19th, 2024, at 4:09 Universal Time coordinated, CrowdStrike pushed channel file 291. It was meant to update the sensor's logic around a specific type of attack vector called named pipe execution. Completely routine. A small file. Nobody looked twice. The problem was in the content validation. Inside that file was a template that the Falcon sensor was designed to interpret and act on. But somewhere in the process, in either the template itself or the mechanism that read it, there was a mismatch. The sensor tried to read a field that wasn't there. It hit a null pointer. And when that happened, Windows didn't gracefully recover. It panicked. And a panicking Windows kernel does exactly one thing. It stops everything, dumps whatever it can to memory, and throws up the blue screen of death. And here's the thing that made this uniquely catastrophic. Because CrowdStrike's update system was automatic and essentially instantaneous, that faulty file didn't roll out to a test group. First, it didn't go to a small percentage of users. It went to everyone. Every single machine running CrowdStrike Falcon on Windows, globally, at the same time. And the moment each machine tried to boot with that file loaded, crash. The recovery process made it worse. Because the machines were crashing on boot, you couldn't remotely access them. You couldn't push a fix. You couldn't run a script. An IT administrator had to physically walk to each affected device, boot it into safe mode, manually navigate to a specific folder, delete the file, and reboot. In large enterprises with thousands of machines across dozens of buildings and multiple countries, that process was going to take days. Delta Airlines alone had 37,000 machines affected. They canceled more than 7,000 flights over the following days. Their CEO later estimated the disruption cost them $500 million. They sued CrowdStrike. American Airlines, United, Southwest, all hit. Airports across Europe, Asia, and the U.S. were processing passengers with pen and paper like it was 1987. Hospitals in Germany canceled non-urgent surgeries. The UK's National Health Service reported disrupted appointment systems. Emergency services in several U.S. states reported dispatch system failures. A Las Vegas casino, which runs on uptime, always went down. The London Stock Exchange had trading delays. McDonald's, Sky News, Visa, the list of impacted organizations ran to thousands. And in the middle of all of this, CrowdStrike issued a statement. The outage was not the result of a cyber attack. They had identified the defect. A fix had been deployed. We apologize for the inconvenience. We apologize for the inconvenience. The internet did not receive that well. Within hours, George Kurtz was on the Today Show. He was composed. He was professional. He owned the error. But the numbers were already doing the talking. CrowdStrike's stock dropped 23% in pre-market trading. In dollar terms, approximately $23 billion in market capitalization evaporated before the New York Stock Exchange even opened. In a single session, it was the kind of destruction that usually takes a scandal, a fraud, or a multi-year unraveling. CrowdStrike did it with one file. In 90 minutes. The lawsuits came fast. Delta Airlines filed a lawsuit seeking damages that analysts estimated in the hundreds of millions. Shareholders filed a securities class action suit alleging that CrowdStrike had made misleading statements about its testing protocols and quality controls. Congress wanted answers. Senators started asking pointed questions about how a single vendor's update could trigger a cascade failure across critical national infrastructure simultaneously, with no circuit breaker, no staged rollout, no failsafe. And that's the question that sits at the center of everything. Not how did CrowdStrike let a bug out? Software has bugs. Every company ships bugs. The question is, did a company whose entire reputation was built on protecting critical systems design a deployment pipeline with zero tolerance for human error and zero mechanism to stop a bad push once it started? The answer is uncomfortable. Because the thing that made CrowdStrike so valuable, the always-on, always-current, zero-latency update system, was also the loaded gun. The speed was the feature. The automation was the product. And nobody, not CrowdStrike, not their customers, not the regulators, had truly stress-tested what happened when that system fired in the wrong direction. This is the pattern you see again and again in these stories. Not malice. Confidence. The same confidence that let CrowdStrike charge premium prices and win government contracts and sit at the top of the Gartner Magic Quadrant becomes the same confidence that skips the staged rollout. That assumes the validation layer is enough. That trusts the machine to check itself. George Kurtz kept his job. CrowdStrike survived. The stock recovered over the following months, because the reality is that the cybersecurity market didn't suddenly have better options. The dominance CrowdStrike had built over a decade doesn't disappear because of one bad day. But something else did disappear, and it's the thing that's hardest to rebuild. Trust. When you sell protection, trust is the only product that actually matters. You can fix the code. You can update the validation process. You can implement staged rollouts and canary deployments and 100 other safeguards that should have already existed. But the moment your customers, hospitals, airlines, governments, banks, have to explain to the public why their systems crashed, and the answer is the security software we paid for did it, you've broken something that no patch can fix. 8.5 million computers, 90 minutes, $23 billion, and not a single hacker involved. That's the real lesson here. In a world where we've built entire industries around protecting digital infrastructure from outside attackers, the most catastrophic failure of modern computing history came from the inside. It came from automation without adequate checks, from speed without sufficient caution, from a system so trusted so embedded, so deeply integrated into the machines it was supposed to protect, that when it finally made a mistake, there was nothing left to stop it. The scariest threats don't always come from the dark web. Sometimes, they come from the auto-update.